America's hosting of the World Cup has taught us something important about motorcycling in America. Hi everyone, welcome back to Bike Like a Dog. Make sure you like and subscribe before you leave today, and let's start talking about the World Cup. Or at least the World Cup in America. When I heard that America was hosting the World Cup, a lot of things passed through my mind. But one of them was not an expectation that it would help explain motorcycling in America. And especially why American motorcycling seems to be so different from motorcycling almost anywhere else in the world. Like many, I enjoyed seeing all the videos from people around the world coming to the United States for the World Cup and being floored by various things about our country. From Walmart, Buc-ee's, and Waffle House to the safety they felt in our cities and everything. The videos extolled many facets of American life that we consider ordinary. In fact, you could almost say we don't actually consider them because we don't think about them. There were many comments also about the size and quality of American roads. Our roads are typically bigger than those in many places in Europe. My guess is a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're not constrained by a lot of infrastructure dating back hundreds of years before cars were invented. Our modern roadways were built after the introduction of the car. We had a Federal Highway Act all the way back in 1916 and started building our interstate highway system in 1956. Now you have to understand, before 1916, not a lot of highways and roads and stuff like that, dirt roads here and there. Typical lane widths here are 10 to 12 feet or about 3 to 3.65 meters. And our interstate highways are designed for large vehicles to travel at high speeds. When people originally settled here from Europe, they could own their own land. And as that expanded out of the northeast and headed down to the southeast and then out west, those tracts of lands got bigger. 160 acres? That's nothing once you get past the Mississippi heading west. We saw independence not just as a national issue, but at an individual level. People would live where they'd only head to town once every few weeks or few months to get supplies they couldn't raise or grow on their own. Those distances meant travel by horse or buggy was common. We're kind of the chicken and egg, right? We drove due to the distances between things, and then we built things distances away because we drove. Only in the large, most densely populated urban areas will you find significant levels of public transportation and pedestrian traffic. One man online was speaking of how driving similar distances in time that would be used going from, say, Paris to Baghdad wouldn't even get you out of Texas in America. Now, granted, Texas is our second largest state. Alaska is over twice the size of Texas. And they did cherry pick the longest route across the state, but still, it was factually true. So I figured, well, why don't I compare what I consider a normal drive to what would be a similar European drive. Those of us in Atlanta consider a drive to Disney World to be a fairly moderate drive, something we might do on a long 3-day weekend. According to Waze, it's about 438 miles. That's about 705 kilometers. Estimated driving time is 6.5 hours down the interstate, 7 if you want to avoid the toll roads. It's actually more like an 8+ hour drive because you need to stop for food, restrooms, and of course refueling. In Europe, that's roughly the distance between Amsterdam, Netherlands, to Sierre, Switzerland. I should point out that all of these times include large portions of the journey being on interstate highways. These trips would take much longer if using regular state highways and roads. Incidentally, Americans don't talk about distance when we talk about the drive to get from one place to another. We talk about time, because time can vary greatly depending upon the time of day, the traffic, the route, and so forth. We don't much care whether something is 3 miles or 15 miles. What we care about is how long it's going to take for us to get there. Mileage is no predictor of time. When you're in downtown Atlanta, traveling 3 miles can take as long as traveling twice that distance in a suburb, or maybe 10 miles on the interstate. We routinely drive 20 minutes to a restaurant, regardless of the distance, to meet friends, to go to our kids' sporting events, whatever. The University of Georgia is about 2 hours from us in Athens, Georgia. With our son in school there, we'll either drive up there or he'll drive home at least once every 4 to 6 weeks, more often when we have a free weekend for a football home game. When I was a freshman at UGA, my roommate and I actually drove an hour and a half home to see a movie in a theater. We watched it twice, then drove back to Athens the same night. We didn't go home. We didn't see our parents. Our parents didn't even know we were there. Not a big deal. And driving just over an hour from Athens to downtown for dinner and an off-Broadway show? Not even a second thought. So how does this all relate to motorcycling? As many of our visitors traveled through, especially the Mid-Atlantic, Southeast, Southwest, and Great Plains regions of the U.S., they saw the vastness that is America. They saw roads like this, where you can drive in a straight line for hour after hour with little to see. Think about the road for Forrest Gump, where he stops running. Yeah. That's not an unusual sight in the western United States. Covering distances like that on a 125cc motorcycle or motor scooter is not ideal. That's not to say it can't be done. Every couple of years there's a scooter cannonball, for example, that crosses from one coast to the other using bikes as small as 125cc's. Now, these aren't races per se. Per their website, it's a test of endurance and navigational skills. In 2025, the 8-day route was just under 4,000 miles. Yes, roughly 500 miles or 805 kilometers per day for 8 days to cross the lower 48. Our interstates, with their high speeds and gentle curves, make transcontinental travel easy for us. However, it's not something that's really good for a small motorcycle. To sort of prove my point, I took our Honda CRF250L down just one exit on the interstate near where I live. Now, my original plan was I was going to take it down one exit, get off, go across the bridge, get back on, come back up the other side. Nope, didn't do it. Doubt I'll ever take that bike on the interstate ever again, unless I absolutely have no options. As I was getting off, I was like, no, I'm done. No more interstate for a baby. Meanwhile, I took this video on the same interstate highway, just one exit up, while riding on my Ibex 450. When I was a very new rider, I had also taken my Kawasaki Z500 on this interstate. I took it for several exits. Also, quite capable. I don't have any video from that, nor do I have video from my son's Ninja 500. But same thing there, no problems. While none of those bikes have cruise control, their 450-ish cc power plants were all quite capable of handling the highway speeds, with a little left over. The only real issue is the lack of cruise control on those bikes, which you really need if you're going to be planning to ride for hours on end. But if you really want to be comfortable traveling the highways of America for multiple days of high-hour riding, what you really want is something with a a really comfortable seating position with cruise control and other amenities such as, CarPlay or maybe even some speakers to play stuff if you're in a state where, there's no helmet requirement. And yes, we have only 18 states with universal helmet laws requiring everyone to wear helmets. You'd want something with an engine that doesn't jar your teeth out after 6 or 8 hours of riding, with a suspension that smooths out the ride. You'd want good wind, weather, and road debris protection that will reduce fatigue as well as provide protection for the rider. You also want decent luggage capacity, since you may be on the road for up to a week or more, just going from one coast to the other. And your spouse may be like one of my old bosses who told her husband that she'd ride on the back of their bike anywhere and for any time as long as there was a comfortable hotel room with a hot bath, hot meal, and a soft bed each night. Who would make motorcycles like that? Well, hopefully you've recognized by now this is exactly the type of bikes produced by American motorcycle manufacturers, Harley-Davidson and Indian Motorcycles. And that's why motorcycle riding in America is just plain different from anywhere else in the world. We've got these great roads across wide open spaces that are just begging you to get out there on two wheels. Our motorcycle culture took off when a lot of World War II veterans returned home after riding bikes in the Army, Harleys and Indians. Now, those bikes were sold as war surplus after the war, and many of those men grabbed the bikes they'd been riding during the war. They'd already been riding them all over the theaters of war, and now they had a chance to explore the country they'd been defending. And the men they'd served with lived all over the United States. They created clubs, attended rallies and events with other riders from all over the U.S., reuniting with old friends, meeting new ones, and their passion spread to the formation of women's motorcycle clubs as well. And the motorcycles used by everyone, mostly built in America. Japanese bikes were not yet a factor. Yeah, there were a few European makes thrown in, such as Triumph, BSA, Norton, and the like, but if you've trusted a bike with your life and can pick one of those up as war surplus, who wouldn't? That formed the American motorcycle culture. The first Japanese touring bike that came into the U.S. was the Honda Goldwing, which hit our markets in 1975, 3 decades after World War II ended. More followed, but even then, their cruisers are only 1 or 2 models in their entire lineup. For American manufacturers, they are the lineup. The videos shared by those visiting for the World Cup really helped show why motorcycling here is so different from other parts of the world. We just think differently. Whether it's food, cars, trucks, or motorcycles, we think big. And big fits the riding on our highways and byways really well. When we ride, we're riding in this, not this. To all those who came over for the World Cup, thanks for coming. We appreciate the kind words you've shared from your journeys and hope you'll continue to share your experiences. And you're welcome back anytime. You don't have to wait for another World Cup. In fact, if you really want to see America, come during the World Series or the NFL playoffs, or my favorite season, college football playoffs. And with that, we'll call it a day. Thanks for sharing your time here today. Please be sure to like and subscribe. And until next time, go dogs. Woof, woof, woof.